Hey, good evening, and welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club, the Comics Masterpiece Edition. It's a good book this time. I'm really excited, particularly because of sort of the history of this, and we're going to talk about all that. But our book is Strangers in Paradise, and we've got the awesome and wonderful Terry Moore with us here. There's Terry. Hi, Terry. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, man. Good to see you too. One of the reasons that this book is it like sits in my mind in the way that it does is that I remember that you sent me a photocopy of the first issue before it had ever even seen print, and you just happened. I don't know if you did this on purpose or if it was an accident, but you just happened to do it like 3 days before I left for Comic-Con. And that was back in the day when there was a special retailer night of Comic-Con that was actually like a private thing. And I loved the comics so much that I took it down with me to San Diego and like made a point of showing it to every single person that I knew, and chalking it up. And I'm sure that we increased your orders by 20% just from that.
Thank you. I remember doing that, and it was not because of clever timing. I just looked into that timing, but yeah, and the one that you saw was eventually the unpublished one.
Yeah,
I redrew it, and but you saw the prototype, and man, your encouragement launched me for years.
you redrew it? I did not know you redrew it.
Yeah.
What? Why?
I know. Right here in the tub, I have it, and it's in a folder. What the biggest problem was that it was in the wrong format. I drew it in more of a Love and Rockets format, which is more A4 instead of 11 SMT.
Yeah.
Well, the formatting was wrong. I was going to have these weird borders on the comic, and then the other problem was that I was still developing the story, and I thought I need to update some things in the story. You know, like I gave David a better look, and I changed some of the things in the story. Because it's funny when somebody says, okay, we're going to publish this. It's amazing how that makes you take a double take at your work and think, oh Lord, I can do better.
That's crazy though that you redrew it. And it's funny. I wish I had known that because I would have kept the photocopy. I mean, I didn't keep the photocopy because I knew it was coming out as a comic. I never compared the two versions. That's actually really entertaining.
I have a big book from Graffiti Design where he actually put the first version and the printed version together, and the first version's on vellum or something, and you can see the difference. You can compare it, but it's in that great big huge arty book.
Right. Yeah. Because it absolutely fit onto an 8.5 by 11 photocopy.
Yeah,
so yeah,
exactly.
Rocket size. Yeah. That's hysterical.
Yeah. I blew my lead time.
How many people did you send that out to? Just out of curiosity.
There's only 2 places it went out. I came out of my house for the very first time like a groundhog, and I went to a local show, and it was a very small 1-room hotel show. Patty Jarris was there with John Bogdanovi, and for some reason, I don't know why, there were a lot of DC editors there. I don't know why they were there, even Archie Goodwin. So I showed it to John Bogdanovi, and he said, you need to work on your knees. And I showed it to Patty, and she flipped through it, and she said, I like the story. I'll introduce you to the DC guys. And I went from junior editor down to like 5 editors and ended up in front of Archie. And he said, we can give you some work in the back of an anthology book or something, if you want to get started. And I went home excited. And then I was following you because I was really following the West Coast scene. I did not want to be stuck in Texas. I wanted to work the West Coast and the East Coast. And you were the man on the West Coast. So I sent you a copy and crossed my fingers. And your verbal reply to me was, I remember talking on the phone, you said, you're the real thing. And that carried me I swear it carried me for like 20 years. I
Yeah.
told you this before. I mean, my gratitude, that's the one that carried me. I just needed that one word from the
Yeah.
right guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
was
I
I
was
was
looking
never
at,
I was never the guy though. That's the funny thing.
you were the
I was
guy.
always like the fifth guy or the sixth
No,
guy, you
you're
know?
the guy. I mean, I
No, I
met
mean
Archie
back
before
then,
you.
no, it absolutely would have been Rory at Comic Relief, or
I talked to him.
it would have been Golden Apple, you know. No,
Oh,
Joe
Brian,
Field.
come on. You're right there.
I was the youngest one of my cohort. I was just the loudmouth. That's all.
Maybe you were I liked you because you were the cutest.
Well, thank you.
Did you know that I gave you a thanks in the first issue?
Yeah.
And then in the
Yeah.
second issue, I printed your letter and I gave you a heads up and thanks again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah, no. I mean, anybody who does great comics, and you know, I mean, so the thing to me, and you know, actually, I didn't even start this interview right. I always ask one question as my first question, and I just skip straight to that. So let's start with the actual first question.
Okay.
And we'll get into some of your background, and we'll come back to this. The first question is, why comics? Clearly, you are a talented writer and artist. You could probably have done anything that you choose to. What was it that made you go comics? Because it certainly at the time it wasn't like I can get rich doing this.
No. I don't think there were any millionaires back then.
No.
I think the thing that I liked about comics was that I could make a story without having to talk other people into doing it. You know, I could draw it, I could write it, and I could print it. And next thing you know, I've got my comic, which can be, you know, whatever story format you like, but comics works for me. And I had just come from television editing, where in television and in movies, if you want to make a story, you have to talk at least 100 people into it.
Right.
And then you have to wait. And then, you know, all this. In comics, I just go to the drawing board, wherever it is, and I just do it.
Yeah.
I mean, how great is that?
Yeah. So your background's in editing originally, yeah.
Yeah.
So clearly there's a difference between the media, right? Between film and television and comics. I would think that as an editor, you kind of really get to the core of what that is, because an editor seems to me is sort of the heart of movies and television in a way, right? Particularly when it comes to storytelling and time and timing. Can you talk about those differences maybe for a sec?
Yeah, you know, think about all the people that work hard to get like a movie or a show made, just say a show. And then the last person to get their hands on it is basically the editor. And the editor can make or break you, right? You could have done your best, and that editor can cut the timings and everything so that they're awkward, use your worst take, all that. So yeah, the editor is really a storyteller. There's not always somebody behind him saying, cut. He's not a lackey. He's also a creative person. And by he, I mean they, people. But the thing about that I took with me into comics was I spent, say, 11 or 12 years editing. And what they do is, say, for instance, it's a commercial. It's a fashion commercial. They'll go to the Bahamas and they'll shoot, say, 3.5 hours of footage of models, you know, doing whatever they do. Well, they give it to me and they say, okay, I need a killer 1 minute spot and a killer 30-second spot. I look at all 3 hours, and there may be 7 takes, or there may be only 1 take and something unique happen. I just watch it again and again, frame by frame, which is like panel by panel. I watch every panel for 3 hours, and I pick the greatest, you know, cut right in there, out there, you know, and all that kind of stuff, the timing. And after doing that for a long time, you get, you know, really good at it. You
Mm-hmm.
in, out.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got to storytelling, I was thinking in terms of like um, flow, motion, storytelling, all that stuff I'd learned on the screen medium. But I also had my own opinion about things.
Yeah.
One of them really defined Strangers. If we were going to make an action movie, if we made the next John Wick, say John Wick 10, you and I are going to cut in at the last moment and cut out at the very first possible moment, and we're just going to keep it going.
Right.
But in Strangers, I wanted to get it to the room a little bit early and then leave the room late
Mm-hmm.
so that you could hear what, say, Francine and Kachu are in the room. We get there early before the antagonist arrives. We listen to what Francine and Kachu are saying. The antagonist arrives, and then we have our scene. The antagonist leaves. Everybody else would cut. I stay in the room, and we listen to Francine and Kachu talk about him for 20 seconds because that's the good stuff, is when
Yeah.
you leave the room. And just using that mindset about,
Yeah.
there were two things I didn't want to do. I did not want to use a Joseph Campbell hero journey story, and I
Mm-hmm.
did not want to do classic editing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things just kind of were my creative agenda in crafting the story.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I often say that comics are really an art of editing in a lot of ways. It's the path of reduction, right? Like you're trying to find the single perfect image and the single perfect beat, and then tie those beats together in a way that is the best presentation of it that it can be, right? Like to me, so much of it is in the planning and the thinking and the layout and the, you know, maybe not even so much the actual rendering, you know. Does that parse with what you think? Or
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, if you think, well, there's a natural way to tell a story. Here's the best average, peak average of the best way to tell a story. So just do that. It's perfunctory, and you know, you can't get it down to a formula like that. That's not
yeah,
true.
yeah,
I may tell you, it's like the telephone game. I say something to you, you repeat it different, repeat on that, and every cartoonist has their own way of telling you about, say, the dog peed on the hydrant. I have a way of showing it. Every other cartoonist has their own way of showing it, and that's the creative spark. So, you know, we talk about the editing. You would think it would be, you know, cut and dry, but it's not. I mean, because especially in a comic, if I have a scene to show you, you know, like this,
mm-hmm.
that scene took me 3 hours to draw in ink.
Right.
I have to really want it.
Yeah.
That was a hassle. I had to work for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have time to think about it, and then you decide, okay, this is the perfect thing to capture that, and you commit to it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
Where
process.
do are you making those decisions in the layout stage or in the finishing stage?
A lot of it is in the layout stage.
Okay.
And I always refer to myself as a cartoonist because it really is a different animal than
Yeah.
an artist.
Yeah.
I am wired different than the guys who make the fantastic paintings and covers.
Mm.
A cartoonist is kind of like an artist who writes at the same time, and I can address the white piece of paper, get the idea, okay, dog pees on hydrant, and I think about how to start, and I do a story sequence. And that to me is a cartoonist, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I do a lot of it. When I first started back in series in the first book, I would make big scripts because I had come from TV and I was used to scripts. So I could hammer out a script. Writing didn't take very long. But then when I sat down to draw it, the very first page I would change my mind about something, and I'd have to throw the script out because now everything has changed. You know, maybe in my first script, Freddie was a good guy, and then as I'm drawing it, I'm thinking, you know, it'd be really funny is if he walks in here, he walks into the room and says the worst douchebag thing ever, and that's his role. And then now I throw my script out. Now Freddie's the douchebag, and I'm going to run with it.
And did that conflict continue throughout, or or did you rapidly learn to trust your cartooning skills as opposed to your writing skills? If I correctly.
I have one of those, that big gray archival cardboard box. I have one of those full of scripts, and only a little bit of them were used
right.
for the Stranger's Paradise. So I eventually learned my lesson, and I figured out that the best way for me to go is to, every book is inspired by one key moment that I think I've never seen before. I can't even get started on a story unless I can think of something new that I haven't seen and I want to see it. And then I make an outline around it. And then with a good outline and maybe some background info for me, I will start with the outline and say, I know that we're going to start on the mountaintop in Nevada and a Jeep drives up. And then my editor instincts take over. And the editor says, now put this scene in. Now put that panel in. Now that panel. And I work my way to the inspired moment.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, backwards maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, everybody has a different way of making comics too, and I mean, I have literally talked to people who tell me that they make it up as they go along, and then they they fix it all in the end when they're doing their final ink pass, right?
I've done that
and
too.
There's other people who it's purely a writing exercise for them, and the drawing is just mechanical. I love the fact that comics is so big; it can be both things, and nobody is right. Nobody's right. Right? They're all right. Everybody's right.
A good example of just have a tight script and draw it, but then the ideas come. Now what? Was when I worked with Bill Willingham on Fables.
Yeah.
I did an issue, and he had this beautiful script, and I'm drawing it, and he said, I asked, what kind of freedom do I have? And he said, just use my story, but in terms of visual, you have total freedom. Yeah. So my contributions were visual. Like, for instance, there were going to be a lot of little trolls that show up and kidnap Sleeping Beauty. That's what he described, how he described it. They all show up in mass, they grab her, they run. And then I thought, wouldn't it be funny if they all run dorky and they're all left-handed and they each of them, so I made them like Smurfs, I gave each one of them a look and I made them dorky Smurfs that were all left-handed and they ran like, Mr. Bean or something. So those are the kind of things you can add to the script that would, one time I wrote a script and what was it for? Oh, it was for Gen 13. And the artist was incredible and drew so many details in the panels that I didn't describe. I would say they're on the beach in Malibu and it's dusk and just picture that beach with the houses and all that. And he added so much that puts you right there, The artist has a lot to do with it. The storytelling is in the art too.
No, absolutely. So let's talk about art a little. Do you have an art background? Did you train in art? Did you go to school for this?
No, I didn't. I was always cartooning as a kid.
Yeah.
I have a sketchbook from when I was 6. And
it has a sketchbook from when you were 6.
Yes, I do. Wow. I wonder if I can see it. It's in there, right in here somewhere. Let's see if I do have it.
Yeah.
And I have superheroes, and it's right here somewhere.
I love the fact that you've got it that handy and you can find it like that.
Yeah, we're just sitting right next to me.
Yeah. Nice.
I think that's probably Quicksilver on the cover.
Uh-huh.
So I drew this when I was 30. This was last year. No, let me show you. I got some superheroes in here. Okay, this is weird.
I could even see the foundation of your style, though, in that page you just showed us.
Can you?
I thought so. I thought so.
There's Flash.
All right, nice.
I'm still, even back then, my eyes weren't aligned. Oh, here we go. Here's my splash page.
Nice. Nice.
Okay.
Hey, actually, your composition there is pretty fucking okay. That's I mean,
As,
the perspective's a little off, but not bad for a 6-year-old. Are you kidding
yeah.
me?
No, yeah. And you can see what John Bogdanovi was talking about. My knees suck. Those don't work. Those knees don't work.
Yeah.
Okay, here's
What's the first comic you remember reading?
Dennis the Menace.
Dennis the Menace.
Dennis
Okay.
the Menace and Sugar and Spike.
Yeah. Newspaper stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Dennis is.
I love the newspapers.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find one in here to show you that I think is so weird for a kid. Let's see if I can find it. I was living overseas at the time, so I was drawing the English Dennis the Menace.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Recognize him?
Yeah.
Um,
Where
here it is.
so you were in the UK?
I traveled through the UK, but I lived in Africa.
Oh,
And it was it was all British. I went to a British school and all that.
I see.
So there's a point to that. I'll come back to in a second. Let me show you this, Brian. This is weird. You've got a sketchbook from a kid, and it's got a lot of superheroes and stuff. And then in the very back panel, there is my very first Strangers in Paradise.
Oh, neat.
It's a relationship story about these two guys and a girl, and he's talking to her, and I think she puts him down, and he learns a lesson or something.
Yeah. No, and that's I
mean,
there's comics. That's comics. That's like I can see that there's storytelling there. I mean, not particularly good storytelling, but I can see that there's storytelling there.
Oh my God, I got to see.
No. At 6, the effort is all that counts. Honestly, So that's interesting. Your parents were traveling. What were they doing that you were in Africa?
My dad worked at the where they built the rockets in Huntsville, Alabama. They were building the engines, for the moon rocket. And so he was working with that Redstone Arsenal base. And then they said, go to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and set up a television station and for our communication line. So we did. And we lived over there for a year in Dar es Salaam. And my little sister was born there. And that's where I, discovered European comics and all that. And I had my 11th birthday there. So that was, very influential time.
Yeah.
One big deal thing happened there. This is why it's worth mentioning. When I was there, my dad was reading all the James Bond books, and he had like 8 or 9 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was 11, and I grabbed all those little bitty, Ian Fleming books, and I read them all in one summer. I read all the James Bond books in one summer. And also that summer, I was reading an English YA author named Enid Blyton. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she was very popular in World War II and post-World War II, writing, YA books for people. And one of her series that I really liked, I read a lot of English kids books. One of them was about a girls' boarding school, Mallory Towers. So it was, and a year was called a form. So it was first form at Mallory Towers, second form. Each book was a different year as you went from like 7th grade to 12th grade. And so you followed the main character, Daryl, and her very flippant, sarcastic friend, Alicia. And they met all kinds of other personality types in school, but it was always those two, and going through the school. And you lived with these girls basically through those books for those formative 6 years. So if you put together the boarding school Enid Blyton book and James Bond, you have Strangers in Paradise.
Pretty much, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Wow,
that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking back, I see it. And at the time, I didn't think, strangers, no. But looking back, I see it.
Yeah. Oh, that's super interesting, actually. Did you have any formal training at all in drawing, or Is it all you're all self-taught?
All self-taught. I started really loving cartooning when I was in 7th grade. I moved back to the States, or 8th grade. And the first friend I made was a cartoonist.
Okay.
And he was drawing these toads in checkered suits and cigars, kind of like Simpson characters, but with toad heads, you know. And he had a great design that had a great turnaround and everything. And he would draw things like, let's see how many toads we can, these cigar smoking toads who are really buffoons and doofuses. And they would cram like 30 of them into a Volkswagen Beetle and lose control of it and drive off a cliff, you know, teenage boy humor.
Sure.
So I spent all of junior high, we would draw and then pass the page to the guy, trying to get him to laugh in class and get him in trouble, get him suspended and kicked out, maybe. And that was our goal. And my goal was to try to get him to laugh. If I made him really laugh, he couldn't breathe. He would stand in the hall and he'd be laughing so hard, he'd be leaning on the lockers and just banging. And so my goal was to get him to laugh, just draw the most outrageous thing. And I learned that it's funnier if I set it up. So instead of just drawing the picture of the Volkswagen going off the cliff, I would draw how they got into it and why they lost control. And,
right.
Oh my God, you know, and all
right.
that. So I learned timing by immediate audience reaction with him.
Oh, that's
and we got into we started copying all the editorial cartoonists and all the EC Comics and then heavy metal and all that. I mean, just bring it.
Yeah. I always sort of look at Wikipedia before I do these interviews, just to like catch shit that I hadn't caught before. And so it says that you did 4 years basically of working on a British fanzine, BEM. Can you tell me about this?
No, I don't know about that.
Is Wikipedia lying to me?
Maybe. Was it me or my namesake, the actress?
No. It was the Terry Moore Wikipedia page. Wow. See, now this is horrifying and embarrassing that I'm.
No, should we talk about my lost years?
Yes, let's talk about your lost years. Yeah.
There was that time when I was doing way too much Diet Coke, and I really don't remember.
Okay. Too much Diet Coke. Yeah, it says while living in England in his early 20s, Moore was a contributor to the British comics fanzine BEM. His humorous comic strip Thunder Mole was a regular feature in BEM from issue 13, May 1977, to issue 34, July 1981. That's not true?
No. Let's see who that is.
Yeah, no, I mean, otherwise this is clearly you, though.
I'm me, but you're freaking me out, man.
Yeah.
Thunder Mole.
As Terry Moore cartoonist. That's bizarre. Okay.
I can't find it. I can't. We'd have to.
So I put in my Google search, I put in Terry Moore comics, and then I went to the Wikipedia page, and then Terry Moore cartoonist is the one that shows up. Yeah, and otherwise it's you. It's all about Strangers in Paradise and stuff. But there's this paragraph about you working on a British comic.
I want my check.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Was it a success? Did I make?
It doesn't say. It doesn't say.
Maybe I was on the Graham Norton show. I don't even remember it.
Yeah, and then it said you worked as a musician for a little while.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that paragraph is right then. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't say anything in there about prison.
Nope, nothing about prison. No, or trains, or mama,
or her truck.
You got the reference. Thank God.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's a country song in joke.
If you didn't get the reference, I probably would have not been right.
It's not a country song unless it mentions mama, trains, truck,
prison. Yeah. David Allan Coe. Such a good song. Anyway, okay. So then was Strangers your first comic then?
Yes.
Nothing before.
I had never drawn a 28-page story before. My longest works before that were like a satire of Batman that was 6 pages long, that
Right.
kind of thing. And then I did a trunk load of comic strips. I really wanted to go to newspapers. Um, and they were already, it just wasn't working. And the reason it didn't work was because I just admired those guys too much. It was too much hero worship. Everything I did was derivative. And when you're a copycat, you know, Elvis is cool. Elvis impersonators are funny. Jimmy Page is cool. Jimmy Page impersonators are funny. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just admired Schultz and Watterson and Breathitt too much, and they
Mm-hmm.
were in everything I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to a comic store and saw, this was way early on, like 92, and I saw the explosion of black and white indie comics.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who any of those guys were because I had been away from comics for quite a while, and there's a reason, I'll tell you. But I saw all this, and I thought, I can do that, and I don't know any of those guys. I'm not going to copy any of them. I'll just I have to figure out my own path. And that was it.
Interesting. It's really funny because that's really similar to the story that Jeff Smith told me as well. He wanted to do strips, and he tried and he tried and he tried, and it just wasn't working. And one day he walked into a comic shop and saw the explosion. This would have been 4 years, probably 3 years before you, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
He's like my older brother.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
You want to know why I hadn't been to a comic store in 10 years?
I do.
Oh, you're going to like this.
Yeah.
I had a job where I was driving the car and making rounds between newspaper places, picking up the editorial sheets, taking them back to the printer hub.
Okay.
I stopped at the 7-Eleven or whatever to get a Coke and a candy bar and the new Spider-Man comic. And I got the Spider-Man comic. I sat in the car in the parking lot, drank, ate, read it. And it's the one at the very end where Gwen Stacy is pushed off the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah.
Gwen Stacy dies.
Yeah.
I was so mad.
Gary Conway.
I hulked out. I threw the comic out the window, and I did not go into another comic store again until the indie black and white movement.
Yeah.
And to this day, the writer is he who shall not be named. I blame the writer.
Gary Conway.
Sorry,
Voldemort. Sorry.
I had such a crush on Gwen.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. And, Mary Jane was the Kachu. Gwen was the Francine.
Yeah.
And Peter was supposed to be with, Gwen,
Yeah.
Oh, broke my heart. My heart, man.
Yeah. And so you were buying comics from the newsstand at that point, obviously.
Yeah, 7-Elevens.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, there was a comic store.
Yeah.
And when I was buying comics, it was either 7-Elevens, grocery stores, or head shops.
Yeah.
And head shops is where you went to go get all of the indie underground guys. And so they were well stocked. You had everything from the European Hercule metal, heavy metal.
Yeah.
To that's where I discovered Mobius and all those guys. Everything from Harm to Mobius.
Yeah. Where was this? Was this Houston?
Dallas.
Okay. So so there was a pretty big head shop scene there too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was great for music. The drug scene was fantastic. And it was a great place to be in high school. You had a lot of concrete, and you could drive and be with your friends. And we weren't in a urban big city thing, which is a whole other vibe. So it was kind of like growing up in a town in Kansas or something. It has its own weird landscape.
Yeah,
but it was good for school.
Yeah. And when you went back into an actual comic shop, what drew you back into it? Did you just happen to pass by one and you thought, let's go back and see? Or were you looking to start comics again? I mean,
no.
Okay.
I wasn't. It was not on my radar. I was
Mhm.
still cartooning at home and not getting anywhere. And not one and not, I didn't know what to do. I thought, well, hell, I'm just going to be a hobby cartoon. I'm going to edit during the day and draw cartoons at night. That's
Yeah.
my life. And then my son got to first grade. And I bet you've never heard this before, Brian, but my son did not like reading primer books in first grade.
Hmm.
So I thought he loves all the Saturday morning cartoon shows. I bet there's comic books of them. Let's go see if they have, Animaniacs comics or something like that at their
Right.
comic book
Right.
store. So we walked in the comic book store, and he's looking at, the color kit section of all. Of course, everything on Saturday morning is there, and then just to the side of it is all these black and white comics
Yeah.
that I thought, well, I can draw like that. And I look at them, and I see every great stuff. I see I see Love and Rockets. I see Cerebus.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff. The early stuff from this is about 91, 92.
Yeah.
So it's out.
Sure.
And I saw it and I pulled me in. And then when I was at the counter, behind the counter were incredible things, beautiful things I'd never seen before because the color had changed. People had gotten better at getting coloring. I saw the gosh, I can't even think of the names, but this was just before Sandman.
Okay.
So I saw Rocketeer
Right.
and the early books from those painters from just before Vertigo and all that.
Sure. Sure.
It-
There was like Sienkiewicz and Muth and
yes,
Charlie
yes,
Vess and yeah.
all that. And
Yeah.
that's what got my respect. And I thought, holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
So everything
Mm-hmm.
from a pen and ink to that to
Mm-hmm.
Rocketeer. And I thought, okay, now I'm back. I'm interested in what's going on. And I spent the next year just buying and catching up.
Interesting. Interesting. And what was because so I mean I know that Robin is ultimately sort of the heart of the business part of it, right? Like there's no way you could have done this without Robin.
No, I'm a total
Um,
flake.
yeah. So talk me through that part. Talk me through the like I want to do cartoons and now I want to do comics and how did what happened?
It's like having a good job and you go to your wife one night and say, I think I want to quit my job and start a hot air balloon company. I'm going to go, you know what? I'm going to go back and start a band,
Yeah,
Yeah, I had a good career, and I could have kept going with it, but I could read the writing on the wall. We were already doing random access editing with Avids. Um, I had come out to the Bay Area and trained at the Avid School and all that already, and so I knew the writing was on the wall. All the producers were going to get Max and do their own main editing, and then there was just going to be fulfillment at the labs. So I knew that my career was not great. And I didn't want to sit in a dark room the rest of my life. So I thought, you know what? These comics, maybe this is my path. I can't do newspapers. I'm going to try it. I just got to try it. And and this was not just about comics. This was like a personal mountain that I had to climb. I was desperate to make something original. You can tell how I have a thing about not being redundant. I want to have my own way, my own path. And so one night I got all those strips. There was hundreds of them. I put them all on the floor, and I pulled out everything that was copycat and anything that had an original thing in there. I kept.
Yeah.
So the original stack was very short, and it had the three main characters, Kachu, Francine, and David, in it. And I could not figure out what to do with them because everything in the strips had been random. Then I passed this house that you rent to live in by Rice University, and I was at the stop sign. I was looking at it, and I thought, for some reason, I could just picture all three of them living in that house at the same time. What would it be like for David to live in the house with two ladies who were very different?
Right.
And I have this. I sat down and I just drew this picture. And this is basically Kachu, Francine, her boyfriend, David, and his sister.
Yeah.
That's the very first drawing of
Yeah.
Darcy Parker there. And while I was drawing it, I was thinking about, well, this Francine probably has a milkshake because she loves that, and food is her medication because Freddie is a jerk, and Chu is looking at her, painting her because she really loves her, but she can't do anything because Francine's focused on her boyfriend. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
mind starts working.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
This working on just drawing this, I got the entire concept for the series. That's
Nice.
and that's what that was. After that, I sat down, drew the first issue where you just meet them, and I took it to the comic show, sent you a copy.
Yeah.
Everybody said keep going, and so I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Cut the car
so
in the lake.
when you say that you got the whole concept, do you mean the original 3-issue miniseries,
Yeah.
or did you have the thriller part of it figured out at that point?
The only thing I knew was that the only thing I really knew was that I knew their starting point, and I knew that Francine here and Kachu is over here, and in the story they're going to cross paths.
Yeah.
Kachu is at her worst, Francine is at her worst, but for totally different reasons, and then they cross paths and they end up so that by the end of the story, Francine, you're going to see how strong Francine really is.
Yeah.
And you're going to, Kachu is finally going to trust somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That was my only long-term goal.
Mm-hmm.
And everything in between was details of how they got there, the road trip. In the miniseries that I did, 1, 2, 3,
Yep.
which, let's tie this in, is the very start of this book, by the way, guys.
Yep.
The reason why we're talking about these comics are in there. And for the first 3 comics, the miniseries, all I knew was let's just show that Francine is a dating mess. Kachu has unfulfilled feelings. And in the story, I keep implying that Kachu came from a really dangerous, awful place. And she's hiding out. And so she's hiding out from everything in her life. And Francine is tripping over every single thing in her way. And that's our starting point.
Yeah. And so
and the rest of the series I have to pay my check. I kept saying stuff in California is dangerous, Darcy Parker, blah blah blah.
Right.
And then I had started proving it and showing it.
Yeah. So you said that you would never draw anything longer than, let's say, 6 pages, maybe 8 pages at that point. And suddenly you're doing a 28-page first issue. So how did that did you just sit down and draw that did you already have Antarctic lined up? Like where's the process there?
I wrote out a script just like I was doing a television show. It looks just like a TV script, you know.
Yeah.
And I wrote that script over and over for about 9 months. And then I had one that I was ready to draw, and then I started drawing it. And it was the editor training in me that knew I could do 28 pages. And I'd wasted my time drawing years of comics anyway, so why not just stay on one thing?
Right.
So it was time to focus and corral and focus on one thing. I already knew from music that instead of having one good idea in 12 songs, put every good idea you have in one song.
Yeah.
Go for it every time. Don't think you can spread out. So in Strangers, I still had all these sides to my cartooning. I just put them all in that story.
Yeah.
I was still writing poetry, music. I could draw Disney things. I could draw, more realistic things. I put it all in Strangers, and you see Strangers flow like Nemo's bedroom dreams, and it all kind of worked. It became my voice. I wanted to not just show a room. I wanted to paint the world around the room too, so that you knew that Francine smelled of baby powder, and Kachu listened to the musician Griffin Silver, and you knew all this ambient stuff as well.
Sure.
And that once you start working that way, you don't want to leave. I mean, I realized in the long run that what I was doing was escaping, you know, and I painted a better world than what I was living in. And to go there and work on it and make it, if I poured my heart into it and got this great, like, oh man, that was a great getaway, maybe the reader would feel the same way. They would dive in and be there, for
Yeah.
19 pages.
Yeah. And did you? So, how did you end up at Antarctic? Like, did you?
I had the Xerox I sent you,
Yeah.
the very first prototype, which was
Yeah.
like 28, 30 pages.
Yeah.
I sent it to everybody, every publisher. They
Okay.
all sent it back.
Okay.
And then that time I was at the DC show,
Yeah.
I went to that show and Archie offered me a job. I went home thinking that was great. In the mail that day, I've told this many times, it's true. In the mail that day was my submission back from DC, the front office with a rejection.
Mm.
And I thought, so this is a face-to-face business.
Right. Yeah. Very much is. Yeah.
Don't send stuff in the mail and hope
Yeah.
that somebody sees your potential and they
Yeah.
lift you up.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. There is no
Yeah.
father figure. Go out there, present yourself, show that you're a real person, and you really want to work, you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And now they know you.
Yeah.
So I did that way from then on. So Antarctic Press called me and said, we got it. Do you think you could do another one? And we're thinking about maybe doing 3-issue miniseries.
Right.
Yes. I didn't even think about it. I just said yes.
Yeah.
I knew I'd figure out a way to make up a number 2.
Yeah.
And after that, I've been making them up ever since.
Yeah. And how far in advance of publication was this? It must have been really rapid, right?
Yeah. I had the first one finished. They said, well, you've already got the first one finished.
Yeah.
Start drawing the second one.
Yeah.
And this was like in
But you redrew
August.
the first one.
This was in August. They said,
Yeah.
we're going to solicit it. And the first time we can get it out is November. And I said, okay, great. And then they said, then we're going to, so you start working on number 2 and we'll solicit it for December. I said, great, no problem. And then, so I hung up the phone, I'm happy. And I look at number 1, I'm thinking, oh shit, I can do better.
Yeah.
I started redrawing number 1.
Wow.
And I lost all my lead time. And I turned it in fine. It came out in time. And then I was working nights till like 4 a.m. to get number 2 done in time. And I've been working that way ever since. I've been behind the curve ever since.
Really? Oh man.
Yes.
I thought by now you would have caught up.
No, I'm an idiot, Brian. I'm never going to figure it out. Just 30 more years, I'll get ahead.
Oh, that's funny. That's really funny. That's interesting.
I still stay up 2 nights in a row to finish an issue and get it turned in. And in some ways, it's kind of like going out to the desert and doing mushrooms.
Yeah.
You get into a weird mindset and you're really into it and you draw a tree and you start crying, oh, that's a great tree. And you kind of really get into the ending. So sometimes I've come up with some really great endings because I sleep deprived, It's a different way of working.
So I think I understand how that works when a book is working and you're successful and it's happening. Does it still work when the audience or the market isn't responding the same way? Does it discourage you to do that work at that last minute, or is it even more like, no, this time I'm going to prove it to them?
Oh, Ryan.
I'm sorry, that was a dark question.
No, that is the most relevant question between the two of us you could possibly ask. Sure. That is a real thing, because for the first year and a half, I went through a golden boy period. And then after that, you're one of thousands. And then out of sight, out of mind. So one of the things about making Strangers in Paradise for like 12, 13 years, I felt like I was becoming Blondie. One of those strips that everybody's heard of, but nobody reads. So I was feeling it because my numbers were just going, each issue was 500 less.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
And
didn't know that actually. I
yeah,
actually thought you were on the upward slope at that point.
no. And
Okay.
I think, you know, the reason we kind of started trades was so that you could find out of
Right.
print
No, yeah,
singles.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, that kind of worked against us eventually. People said, well, I'll just wait for the trade.
Right.
And that started coming into play. And this is, you know, the 90s, late 90s. And that was already coming into play. And that was affecting my numbers, which were, you know, always modest anyway. You know, it was always like, I started at, say, 15,000.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that much basement space to go down. Um, so there was a period there where I was thinking, okay, maybe I just need to try harder. It needs to be more in, needs to be something people would talk about. It needs to be stronger, better. So I didn't get discouraged. I actually drove deeper into my factory and, you know, really started trying to find my own thing. If I was going to die on my hill, I at least wanted it to be a beautiful hill, you know. And then we finally ended it, and everybody said, "Good job." And then I started the next one, got a great launch, and then halfway through the series, this was Echo. It went for 30 issues, and the last 10 issues were down with the orders. And you're
Yeah.
thinking, crap. Okay, well, I need to wrap this up. Okay, now the number 3 issue. And I'm telling you this for a reason. I get to Rachel Rising, and I
Yeah.
think I want to be back on a long-term series so I can just really get into the details. So I started Rachel, and I'm halfway through Rachel, and for the first time in my life, I'm getting all positive reviews. I mean, you just cannot get better reviews than I got for Rachel. They
Yeah.
said things that you would only dream somebody would say. And I'm thinking, finally, and my orders went down. Great
Yeah.
review, down. Great
Yeah.
review, down. Win an award,
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about you, Brian. It was about Diamond and the
Sure.
way the trades were working and all that.
Sure.
And I remember the day that um, I Robin told me the orders on like Rachel, um, you know, 31 or something like that, and it was an
Mhm.
all-time low. I instantly just got so red mist. I have a desk here. I
Yeah.
slammed my fist on the desk and totally crushed the side of my desk like Hulk.
Wow.
And I don't know if I can show it to you. I screwed it back together with wood screws and stuff. I don't know if you can see it.
See? Uh,
There's
we can just barely see it, I think.
Are
Yeah.
you there?
Yeah.
There's
Wow. Wow. You
there's
took a chunk of your desk away. Yeah.
there's 2 more.
Wow.
I knocked everything over. Okay, never mind. So anyway, that was it. That was my like, okay, I don't know what you do. I got good orders. I have the retailers are supporting me. The numbers are going down. I don't know how you win this game.
Yeah. You
So
know,
after
it's
that,
interesting. It's interesting, Terry, because I always thought that you that suffered, it's the wrong word, from immediately having your next idea and immediately coming to market, right? Like you didn't give anybody a chance to go, fuck, where's Terry Moore? I really miss that guy.
yeah. And you
You
know
know what I
why?
mean?
The reason is because that was my next rent check.
No, I understand. Believe me, I understand. It's just
And when I see other cartoonists and they say, "Well, I'm going to take a year sabbatical," I'm thinking, "How do you live?
yeah,
How do you do that?" I mean, or
yeah.
somebody will say, "You know, I'm tired. I just don't think I'm going to do. I'm going to go away for 2 years and do a graphic novel." And I'm thinking, "How do you live?"
Yeah,
I had to.
yeah, yeah. But when that first trade of Strangers came out, you won the Eisner that year, as I recall.
Yeah. So
Like, didn't things go up at that point? Did you?
well, there's a golden boy period where you show up, you're new, and there's a buzz, and everybody's still handing it around. Then everybody knows who you are, and they may choose to, well, it's not my thing, or I'm waiting on the trade.
Right.
Or the people that I have, I tend to, and on strangers, I would tend to get people at a time in their life when they needed strangers.
Well,
That
that's
story.
very true. Yeah, yeah,
And so those people actually have lives,
yeah, yeah,
and they may go off and do something for a while, and then
yeah,
I hear back from them 10 years later.
yeah,
Oh, I remember this story. I'm going to read it again.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But whatever, I don't know. That's a different thing. Making it, I just make it. And then once it's
Sure,
out in the world, it has its
sure,
own life, you know, and
sure.
you have a better idea than I do of what it does.
Yeah, no. I was
The
more
life of a
interested
book.
in the I was more interested in sort of the if you're waiting to the last minute to actually get the work done, and if the
Mhm.
response is not the response that you're hoping for, like how that influences the work for good or for ill, you know?
If I get a criticism, like somebody says, like if somebody puts down one of the basic things of the story that I believe in,
Yeah,
um, I have a rude response. I'm
yeah,
very territorial.
yeah,
I'm willing to fight for my story. I
yeah,
thought this is important. Um, so if you have a problem with it, with the problem with these relationships and the entire rainbow of topics that are going on and how it's presented, and you know, it's basically John Lennon summed it up. You know, everybody deserves to be loved. Love is love.
yeah,
That was that's the rock that story is built on. And if I got any criticism about that, um, I would get my back up because one of the reasons I wanted to do a story, I'm not gay, I'm not female.
right.
Why am I doing this? Well, one of the reasons was because my first cousin, who I absolutely adored, uh, Ben, he was one of the first casualties of the AIDS um, crisis
Oh,
back in the
sorry.
80s.
Yeah,
And so he was my same age and everything. And it was a huge deal. And I'm one of those guys that it hurts the first month and then it'll hurt every month for the rest of my life. And sometimes it gets worse. You know,
yeah,
I just carry things and I
yeah,
continue to so I still had Ben in my heart. And I thought, I never saw Ben treated with respect from his extended family. And he was so sweet to us and my family. We adored him. And I never thought that he got what he just the love and the care and the friendship and the life that he deserved. He was in
mm-hmm,
his
mm-hmm.
20s. And so I had those chips on my shoulder. You know, that was a war I wanted to volunteer for. And that Strangers was my way of doing that, you know.
Yeah,
But because okay, here's where you get weird. I'm a guy.
right.
And um, I knew, like, if I was drawing superheroes, I don't want to work on Batman or Superman because I don't want to have to draw Batman's butt every day for the rest of my life.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I don't want to be the expert in drawing Batman's butt
yeah,
and his torso. You know, no, I will be happy to draw Catwoman for you every day for the rest of my life, you know, or Supergirl or whatever. That's just
sure.
the way I'm wired. So on one side of me is just this guy, but I'm a guy that has a chip on his shoulder about his gay cousin and will fight that fight. And you put those two together and you have
Yeah,
strangers.
yeah. That's great. So I imagine that that getting that first award from GLAAD must have really been
Hmm.
like kind of
I couldn't,
especially special, right? Like,
I couldn't believe it. I
yeah,
mean, I didn't submit it. It was submitted for me and then it won and
yeah,
wow.
yeah.
And I actually won
And
it
that was one
twice.
of the early years that they had started. They had just started the comics category, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And none of my work since has been quite as focused. So,
yeah,
I was so grateful to have that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I've hung on to them.
yeah, yeah. That's cool, man.
I know.
Um,
That
that's
was for
cool.
Ben.
Yeah, I like
Ben
that.
would have liked
I
it.
like that a lot. So you self-published for a while, then you ended up at Image through Homage. What was going on with that?
when I self-published back in those days, we had 18 distributors. I did.
Yep.
There were actually a couple more. And then one by one, they all went away as the collector's market quickly folded after the trading card bust and those guys left.
Yeah.
And by the time we got to where it was just two guys, the other guy, Capital City, was my biggest supporter.
Yeah.
Diamond would order 100,
Yeah.
and Capital City would order 165.
Right.
So, and then Capital left.
Yeah.
And then it was just Diamond, and everybody was freaking out.
It wasn't left. They were put out of business by Marvel Comics buying Heroes World and the cascade of dominoes that fell from that. But yeah.
Details.
Sorry.
Details. And then there was the invasion. We invaded their country, and we just decimated.
Yeah.
Okay, details.
Yeah.
So anyway, we all show up at a Comic-Con very soon after that same year, I guess, and we're all gossiping like high school. What are you going to do? I don't know. What are you going to do? Well, Image is having meetings up in the room. Maybe you can get a meeting and see. Everybody's having meetings. We need an umbrella. So every individual cartoonist, a lot of artists went out and found an umbrella to get with. And I remember Jeff going to Image, and I was thinking, wow, I need to think about that because Jeff is my sensei about all this stuff. And afterwards, I went home and I got a call shortly after from Jim Lee. Are you being robbed?
Yeah, no, it's someone outside who's listening to music really loud. But they've walked away, thank God. So
it sounded like he was peeing on the window.
Yeah, no, it was music.
No, it's not.
Well, it's a kind of music.
Anyway, so I got a call from Jim Lee after I went home, and he said, "I'm going to do homage, and would you like to be a part of that?" And I said, "Oh yeah," and we worked it out, and I did it for about a year, and then that was the end of my period of trying to do as much as I could by myself. When I finally left a year later, Robin was all in. And she put together our company as it is today and started running and everything. And when I went back to self-publishing again, it was all hands on deck. And the whole family was devoted to the publishing business.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And so because I'm curious, I don't know if you remember the details at this point. You had said that that Diamond was like 100 it wasn't 100 copies, obviously.
Well, it was like that.
Yeah, right.
But
100 and 165. When Capital then folded, Diamond clearly wasn't 265, right?
Right.
How far? Did they come up enough to I don't know.
It was awful. It was awful. You didn't go anywhere. You lost them. So
wow.
I had gotten up to what did I say earlier? 16, but I think it was closer to 18,000 or something.
Yeah.
So I'd lose a distributor and everything would just chip down like a tree. And then we lost Capital and it just cut everybody's order in half almost for the indie people, us guys, with the black and whites. They were our champion. And the Diamond order stayed the same. It may have gone up, statistically it may have gone up, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel like, oh, okay, they filled the gap.
Yeah, I mean, 18,000 copies of a black and white book, that's profitable. You can make a living off that.
Yeah, but it went
10,000 copies, 9,000 copies is a lot harder. It's a lot harder.
In 2 years, I went from 18 to 11,000.
Wow.
And then after that, once you're with Diamond and you have more than 2 trades out, and everybody knows you're going to put out another one, then it's just down.
Yeah.
Escalator.
Yeah. The interesting thing, the comparison I always make between Diamond and Capital, just for all those people who weren't there, is that that Capital actually seemed to care about comic books.
Yes.
Capital's catalog would have, I believe it was called Pick Hits to Click, which is the worst phrasing in the world. Pick hits to click. It doesn't even trip off the tongue. But you could tell that those were written by an actual human being who had actually read the comic, and they would be like, no, this is really good because of this, and and it meant something. Whereas diamond was the, was the gem of the month or whatever, but it was just a graphic. There was nobody ever wrote anything. There was no personal connection to anything. Yeah.
Dead on
Yeah.
right.
And the funny thing is that, I mean, ultimately, that's why right now today, Diamond's getting their lunch eaten, and they lost Marvel and they lost DC, and Penguin Random House is almost certainly going to become the comic book distributor in 2 or 3 years because Diamond didn't care. It's not that they didn't care, but they didn't do the thing that they needed to move it forward, And I spent years telling them, it is your job to find the next Jeff Smith, to find the next Terry Moore, and then promote those people. That's where your future is, Diamond. They're like, oh no, but we've got Marvel and DC. We don't need to do any of that, right? We've got the license to print money right now.
Yeah. That is all a verbal way of describing a warehouse business. Then you're just a warehouse.
Yeah.
And you're just moving widgets.
Yeah.
It's an object. And so these are your two biggest widget makers, and you build your business model around those guys. Everything else is just, I don't even know why it's there. I don't even go down that aisle down the grocery store, but we have it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
That's a great way of putting it, Terry, because I actually think that because that's how Diamond approached their business, the culture at Marvel and DC would have changed anyway, but I think Diamond pushed it to change even faster because today both Marvel and DC are in the widget business, right? They're not in the creative business anymore. They haven't been for 10 years, 15 years maybe, they're in the widget business because that's what distribution pushed them towards. And it's the thing that makes me despair for like how cartoonists can make work, right? Like, so you were able to come up and you were able to sell 18,000 copies of Strangers. And so you could make money doing it and it was profitable. And then you came out with your sophomore and junior books and maybe they did better, maybe they did worse, but at least you got a look because you were already established. If you started today, right, you could never do Strangers in Paradise.
No. And if you did it, you'd be doing it for yourself and 30 people on Twitter.
Yep. Or you'd have a Patreon page. Or something.
You'd have to totally. I feel, in a way, I think many creators feel on my side.
Yeah.
Not mainstream work for hire, but on my side, we feel a little bit like, okay, it's sink or swim. You're every individual creator is an island. You're on your own. We wish you the best, but go find your own audience and make your own money because we can't help you. And we all want to be with Diamond because they have at least some trucking going on, and that's how I'm getting my books to the stores. I can't truck them, but in terms of like growing an audience, I don't think anybody at Diamond has read my books in the last few years. I've never heard anybody mention it. I don't know if you and I had a company and we sold food products, would we sell them without trying them? Wouldn't we expect to be an expert?
Yeah.
Like whatever you're selling, you're supposed to be the expert at it, the go-to guy. You're indispensable.
Yeah. Well, I've got a whole store full of stuff that I've read most of these comics in here. Not all of them. You can't
imagine
read all
it the other way.
But I've at least looked at them. I know what it is I'm selling.
Yeah, if it was the other way around and people walked into your store and they said, what is this? And you go, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's $15. That's all I know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to grow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Just from my naive, I'm very narrow focus on my world. But the way I got my thing to work was to be all in, be all about it. And I know that that's how you got your shop to work. And I meet people down the line that they're committed like that, and they all seem to survive. And anybody who's not working that way, they don't last.
Yeah.
And they can be all
very true. That's very true. Now it seems to me, I mean, we haven't had actual sales charts published in since COVID, really. But it seems to me like Serial was actually a big hit, or relatively speaking, you had to go back to press on it.
The first issue had to go back to press because something about the way they printed it, they didn't keep up with the red ink on the way. So the cover starts off red and gets orange. So people were saying, "Oh, look, there's two covers. There's a red cover and an orange cover."
Interesting.
That's as simple as that. I didn't do it. It just happened, and we reprinted with changed the color on the logo, and I said, watch the red. But that was just a natural phenomenon. It was speculator. It wasn't because it got a bunch of good reviews and sold out because of that.
Okay. Did your numbers, are they any better now than they
No,
were?
they're my usual. All my books are usually around 10 to 12
Okay.
on the single issues.
Yeah. Because I would say, I mean, well, you can make a living off that, which is good. Because I would say here in our store, we are definitely currently selling more copies of Serial than we were of Rachel or Echo. It's interesting, because I think some of it is genre, right? Like, Strangers is great because it's not a genre book. I mean, it's a romance, but it's also got this thriller aspect, and it's a slice of life thing. It's kind of like, like it's cross thing. But Echo was very clearly a science fiction book.
Yeah.
Rachel Rising was very clearly a horror, or at least horror style book.
Yeah.
What was the one? The I'm blanking, the monkey one. You know what I'm talking about. The
Monkey
Motor Girl.
Yeah,
Motor Girl is a straight up comedy. Serial seems like it's a little closer to breaking some of that genre in a way.
Serial is more like my. If somebody said, "Terry, put a show on TV right now," I would do Serial because it reflects the world that we live in. And I did that on my own decision. And then after I started it, somebody said, serial killers are kind of, people are interested in them right now.
Yeah.
I didn't know. But I just thought, I'm trying to reflect the time I'm living in. And one of the things, when I did the horror book, people said, "Oh, I don't read horror. I'll catch up with you on the next one." But one of the things I try to do is deflate the shadow in the closet. So I paint the story that there's the dark thing, and then I have my characters look at the dark thing and confront it, deflate it, whatever. And that's why I have these smart aleck characters like Kachu and Zoe, the little girl. Zoe hangs out with the scariest people that you and I wouldn't last 5 minutes with, but her attitude does it. And Zoe is in this book that could be very dark, Serial. I mean, it could be like, I could have easily gone as dark as, other books that we've seen about, documentaries about them. But I used Zoe, and I wanted to, it's kind of cathartic to watch Zoe hunt down a serial killer. And the serial killer is actually, you don't know if you want them caught or not, because the serial killer, they're targeting predators. So, I mean, there's a lot of release in all that. The serial killer is a lady who is targeting down one creep after another and bringing him down. And Zoe, she makes the mistake of killing one of Zoe's friends, and Zoe goes after her. And that's the whole premise of the story.
Yeah.
But I just feel like, on the one hand, you either need to do a story like that right now, or you need to do total escapism and give us something that'll get us out of this shithole and make us happy, So I'm trying to do, like The Mentalist with a little more humor.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Did you watch The Mentalist?
I've seen an episode or two, but I haven't watched more than that.
The Mentalist had a serial killer in there called Red John. And for the life of the series, they presented that alleged character in such a way that it was really, truly frightening. And our hero was lost the family to that killer, so he was unstoppable, but he was a nice guy. So that was the story. And I kind of had it in mind, that and Jack the Ripper and other things, when I started Serial. We all have this big shadow on our lives right now for one of many reasons. And it's nice to see somebody turn around and start running at the shadow and dealing with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, as I said, it's been working here. I mean, we've definitely gotten a larger audience than we have for the last 2 or 3. So
I'm glad to hear that. Maybe I won't have to smash my desk.
Well, no, you don't need to smoosh your desk. That's not good. All right. So let me go back to the thing I was talking about in terms of homage image. As I remember it, and I may be wrong about this, Jeff had made a deal with Image Central. He was published by Image itself, whereas you went through Jim Lee's homage thing.
Jeff and Larry Martyr were friends from way back, so they had a natural connection. I didn't know Larry very well. I knew Larry Martyr of Bean World, but I didn't know Larry as a buddy.
Yeah.
And but I did, for some reason, know Jim a little bit, and I encountered him. And again, it's people who they want to work with somebody, a known factor. I met this guy. I trust him. I'll work with you.
Yeah. And he even drew a section of that that first issue for you, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like I asked him to, actually, and he said yes. Yeah. I mean, you have to ask, right?
Yeah. Was that like your best-selling issue of the book?
Of all time? Yeah, it's like that issue got like 36,000 orders.
Okay.
And that's the Jim Lee factor.
Yeah.
He tripled, doubled or tripled my orders for that one issue.
And then it went back to where it was, or did it?
Then it went down. No, then it went down to like the low 20s.
Okay.
Which some of that you have to account for image style printing, where they may overprint 5,000.
Yeah.
Things like that. So in the long run, over the course of the year, I had a set price. I got a set fee for each issue.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, I thought, you know what? I feel brave enough to try it again on my own and try to do better. I need to run. So we went back and started again. And I like it better being independent and having Robin run the company.
Yeah.
Robin run the country. She can run the country too. I trust her.
I do too. Yeah, no, that's great, man. Because I think that freedom is ultimately, and it was an easy parting, right? For Mirage, there was
No, Jim is a great guy. Absolutely, he's never an obstacle. He's always positive, and he was. He didn't have to be so nice to me, and he was and I think he's just that nice to creators in general. He's a very smart man, but he took time out to do little things, like if I went to go visit the studio, we went to lunch. So that kind of thing. I went out for his birthday party one time, and he sat with me and at a gambling table and gave me an hour-long lesson and stuff, and showed me his family cookbook and things like that. He's just a really genuine, open, nice, friendly guy.
Yeah.
The fact that he's running the company now is because he graduated college summa cum laude.
Right.
He and Todd McFarlane both, and that's why you have those two guys go straight to the top. They figured this game out. Very smart.
Yeah. No, absolutely, 100%. Wasn't trying to get you to say anything bad. That was not a.
He's curious.
I was curious about that history, right? Because it's not a period of history which is really recorded or talked about, or it's all kind of sub rosa, that we think that we know what happened during those times.
You're right. It's not documented, and nobody ever asked me about it, and it was actually a very good time.
Yeah.
I'm
ultimately really fascinated about some of these periods, because it looked like comics could potentially go in one way, and then it kind of didn't happen, and then I don't know. at the end of the day, my loyalty is towards creators owning their own work. And so self-publishers like you and Jeff are to me like the ideal expression of what the direct market can be. And yet almost no one succeeded other than Jeff and you. And in, you know, with Jeff, it's very much like, well, Scholastic had to come along and make this thing happen, you know? And I don't know if we actually reached the thing we were supposed to do.
What was that?
Well, I mean, again, at the end of the day, I believed in the creator makes the work, they own the work, they monetize the work for the rest of their lives. You know, Dave Sims said, I drew Cerebus #1 in 1978 or whatever it was, and every day since then I've made money. Well, that's no longer true, I'm sure, today. But, you know, it was for a solid 25, 30 years. He made money off that first comic all the time. You're presumably still making money off of these comics that you drew, and that you probably look at now and you go, oh, I wish I could redraw it again.
Yeah.
You know, and but you know, you've amortized your cost and you make money, and that's the way it's supposed to work. Whereas you wrote Spider-Man, and you wrote Birds of Prey, and you wrote Runaways, and all of these things, which are properties and that are things for these companies, and you made the what you were contracted to get paid, but you'll never see more than a penny off of them again. You know, if they put out a new edition, here's your $100 check or whatever that amount is.
Right.
Whereas this, you will always make money from. I don't know. This seems like the better model to me.
I have a ton of mainstream work up there that I did, and I don't get money from any of it.
Yep.
But those two shows right there, support me.
Yep.
And that's
and
just
support your family and let you pay your rent. And in a way, you know, the 10 or 12,000 copies, they're just amortizing the cost, right? Theoretically, at least, the money is in this, you know?
Well, you know, even the minute I started, when I was first thinking about this business, the first obvious point is a book lasts forever.
Yep.
You know, you go to the trouble to make the book, and it'll be for sale for the rest of your life. We can still go buy a Mark Twain book. My God, that's 150 years old.
Yep.
But think of all the novels you've bought, and they were written in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. It's like that. So yeah, you make a book, you did not waste your time. It'll be around longer than you. So it's a good thing. But you know, the one thing about being indie, that why it was important to me was I wasted my chance in music by playing in cover bands. You know, we were popular. We worked 4 nights a week for 3 years straight. All that kind of good stuff. You know, at the time, I'm able to make the rent on the apartment. That's all good. But we're playing other people's musics, and we have no future. A copy band has no future. Cover bands have no future. And when I looked at, you have to believe in yourself, do your songs, the pretty ones and the ugly ones, do them live, learn and find your audience, and just gamble on yourself. When I did all the mainstream work, that's a cover band. Yeah. I'm the 1 millionth guy to draw Spider-Man, Batman. You know, it doesn't matter if I draw it or not. Nobody would know. That's all jamming with other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And the only thing that ever got me anywhere was to be, you know, just commit to my own voice and stick with it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And the music comparison is really interesting because, you know, obviously I think almost no musician today makes money from music anymore, right? Like you can't survive doing music because there are no more music stores. We don't sell physical goods anymore. It's all streaming. And so people are getting 1/10 of 1/100th of a percent of a penny of what they're supposed to be earning, Whereas, you know, every time I sell a copy of this book, you're getting $5 or $6 or whatever it is, you know. That's how it should be, I think. I don't know. It's one of the reasons it drives me insane that we have the direct market, and yet not all, but most of the biggest players in the direct market have done everything they can to drive it into the ground rather than to grow it. It gets back to the thing I was saying about Diamond before, right? If Diamond had been smart, they would be finding the next you, and they would be putting all of their weight behind that to grow a future that everybody would make a lot of money from, rather than letting these corporate fucks. I don't know. Sorry, I'm ranting at that point.
No, you are dancing around the campfire that I live at. I mean,
Yeah.
I am totally with you, 100%. I will get in on this dance. One of the things I see from my side as a creator, you're talking about looking, you know, like any other, like every sport in the world goes and looks for the talent, scout the talent, develop it. And that's how you get these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using that in the Hawaiian sense, guys, everybody's guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially in the creative world, especially because so many creative people, they're creating, maybe if they're creating great stuff, it's probably because they're not well-balanced people. They have skewed everything towards creating something wonderful because everything else is messed up, especially when they're young and it's hard to handle. And these are the people who need a helping hand because they don't have it together. They're not 60 years old and calm and not afraid of Wall Street or whatever. They're just overwhelmed. All I can do is make my book. Somebody like a Larry Martyr used to go find these people and say, hey, you know, that's beautiful. I know. I'll publish it. Thank you. And give them that start, you know. Very few people have that whole big combination of, I can write it, I can draw it, I'm a great business person, I will go out and sell it, I'm a great salesman. Nobody's that way. You know?
I can count the number of people who are that way on one hand, literally. You know, and again, I would not count you as part of that group, right?
No, like, I'm not. I would not be here.
You're okay at sales. If you without Robin, right? Like it wouldn't have been able to make it work. You know,
if it was up to me,
you know, I look at most artists cannot also run their career. You know,
right?
As they shouldn't. They shouldn't need to, because they should be artists first. You shouldn't have to manage your own career, you know.
I will be outside staring at the moon, and who knows where my mind is. And Robin is going through a checklist in her head of what's going on around us.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
Yeah,
and I need that moon time, and somebody needs to work on the checklist.
Yep,
I can't do both.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I'm with you there.
I miss the mentors, the guys who were in charge at a company, but they had artistic backgrounds and they knew this, and they would go to the shows and walk Artist Alley and find the great ones, the original ones.
Yeah.
Not the guy who draws like Jim Lee.
Yeah.
Or not the guy who draws like me. They would go find the original ones.
Yeah.
You're on your own path. Okay, you.
Yeah.
You know,
that was, you know, when you sent me that first photocopy, that was exactly what went through my head. Is this, he doesn't look like anyone. Though it's funny, you know, I look at it right now, like I go and I look at that and not even the one that you sent me, the redrawn version, I'm like, oh yeah, no, there's a lot of Berkeley Breathed there, and oh yeah, there's a lot of Schultz there. Like I can see your influences really clearly, but you also, it was obvious that you had a way of seeing comics in the comics page that was yours, rather than I'm just doing what my heroes did, you know, and doing it not very well, you know?
And I need to clarify something here. I keep saying my own path like I invented new oxygen or something. I did not. I have very obvious influences, but my influences are not from the narrow recipe of the last 20 years. My influences span all the way back to 1900.
Yeah.
And so my recipe is that's what it is. It's your
Yeah.
recipe. You
Yeah.
know, we all have the same ingredients. It's
Yeah.
how you put it together to make you, you know.
It's interesting though that, like I say though, your recipe really changes over the course of the first three, and
Yeah.
then when you're in past the first three, it becomes its own thing entirely. And I'm like, it's you. I would almost say you were much more of a raw cartoonist at the beginning. Like
Mhm.
there's bug eyes and there's like spit takes, you know, and there you get much less of that. And as you go further along, you become more about the rendering and the framing and the, if that makes any sense. I'm not
Yeah,
an artist, so I always feel like I'm talking about this stuff in the wrong way.
no, you're saying it right. I had just come from an entire lifetime of cartooning, you know, funny cartooning, comedic cartooning. And then when I started drawing the story, um, I had always been in love with illustrators. I had gone through phases, and I began focusing on the illustrators because what I would do is I would take my first issue and I would put it on the table,
Yeah.
and then I would take like the top selling 5 comics, who was number 1 through 5, and I would lay them next, and I would look at the cover, and look at page 1, 2,
Mm.
3, 4, 5, and I would compare the difference in quality between them and me. And then, you know, I looked like I drew it with my foot, and then they looked like they should be in an art museum. And this, it lifted me up. It made me think, okay, start looking more at illustrators, start incorporating illustration techniques and things like that. Try harder. Stop drawing cartooning with open lines and things that you could get away with. And I changed my mindset. It took a long time.
Yeah.
The I always worry about, like, when you give this first book to somebody who doesn't know anything of me, and they've got to wade through that cartoony section in the first 100 pages and think,
Yeah.
well, is the whole thing going to be like this? Is he going to keep making vibrator jokes and stuff, or what? And then the last half of the book is, you know, so much better. And I think, oh.
Yeah, it's well, you know, and it's the funny thing that I actually, and I don't usually think this, I think that this format book is way better than it was three, right? There were three of the standard format trades, which was this one.
No, there's actually 6. There's 6 of those guys, right? You're talking about the pocket
No,
edition?
no, no. What I mean is the
Oh,
content of this book was
yeah.
at one point the first three trades. Is that
It's the first 2, but the
first two?
number 2
Okay,
is fatter. It
okay.
was, no, not that one.
No, no, but
Anyway,
there's an earlier 1 through 3 trade, isn't there?
yeah, there is. I grabbed the wrong
Yeah,
one.
see, I'm old school. I'm going back to the beginning. This
Yeah.
at one point was 3 trades of something, you know.
It looked like 3 trades.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
I
so
like that
and there's
concept
clear
better.
delineations, but I actually think it's better if you give someone this for $20, and by the time they get to it, they're like, "Oh my god!" By the end, you've changed so much as a cartoonist, and it's actually really enjoyable to watch your evolution as an artist.
I
I
had
think.
to actually consciously decide. If you look at, say, Jeff, the, he says there's a big change, but from the rest of us, it looks like he's so consistent from one to last.
Yeah.
But he sees it. I look like I went from yin to yang, and I had to make a conscious decision. I'm just going to grow up in public. You
Yeah.
can't sit around at home and wait to get better before
Yeah.
you start. You
Yeah.
start when you get a chance,
Yeah.
and then you grow up in public. And
Yeah.
otherwise, I could just keep redrawing number 1 over and over until I get to my modern style.
Right.
Maybe I would be on number 2 right now if I let my anal side take over. You know.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't do that because I'm glad we got
Yeah.
through this. One of my staff members wanted me to ask you about the noses. Why does it look like somebody always has like, you know, that
Allergies.
the allergies? And yeah, I'm about to sneeze.
That's perfect timing. Go for it.
asking. I mean, that's the question. I'm not going to frame it any better than that. It's funny because it's not in the book. It's barely in the book. It's really only on covers and stuff.
I think it's adorable.
I do too.
When I've seen photographs of people that I thought it really caught my eye, the nose didn't melt into the face. It was there, and it looked like it was snowing outside, and I love that look of the cold face. So with Kachu, it ties into her name, Kachu. I said in the story that she got the name because her dad said she was as small as a sneeze when she was born. She was little because her sister from another mother was Tambi, and she was big baby. Her dad's big Polish guy. But they had different mothers. So that was kind of where she got the name. And then I just thought it would be really cute if she had
Sure.
And who had that nose? A lot of time is Marilyn Monroe, especially in her later years. If you look at Marilyn Monroe in the last 2 or 3 years, where she was so adorable, she has that red nose.
Yeah.
I just think it's great, and I always instruct whoever's doing the cover, please do that. And if they don't do it, I add it.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe it's a Red Nose Day thing. I don't
know. At what point did you decide that everything you were doing was in the same universe? Because I don't know that it was apparent, like when I was reading Echo or Rachel, that they were set in the same universe.
I got halfway into Echo, the second book, and realized that I needed to go to Washington to find out where a secret military installation was in Alaska. And I thought, I need to come up with a new character that can do that. And I thought, I already have one. I have Tambi, who would know that. And Tambi would have, she has probably a dozen Parker girls working undercover in Washington who could give her this answer. And so I thought, instantly I realized I could make my own Heinlein universe. He got about halfway through his career and decided he was going to tie them all together with Lazarus Long. And it was all one big thing. And I thought, that's it. My SIP is my core base of characters that ties it all together. It's all in the basic modern time frame, and they can all run into each other, and the circles all overlap.
Have you hit a point with any of that where you're like, God, I wish I didn't do that? Or are you happy that they're all, because like some of these concepts don't necessarily work evenly with the other ones.
Yeah,
right.
You're right. There has to be a good reason for somebody to go in and out. Yeah. So I hope I've never pushed it. And the one that, you can really get into like 7 Degrees when you get to Serial, because it's just Zoe who came from Rachel, but Rachel did meet Kachu. Yeah. So you can turn it into a Kevin Bacon game. How does so and so relate? How do you get, how few steps can you get back to Francine and Kachu? Right. And you could make a chart about that. We should make a game about that.
I guess we could, yeah.
That could be a trivia game.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Yeah. I don't know. What was the next thing I was going to ask you? You still work physically, I think, because your drawing table is right there in your back, right? Mm-hmm. Are you purely physical? Do you do semi?
And that's all the art.
That's not all of the art. That can't possibly be all the art.
Well, there's 4 of these tubs.
Oh, okay.
2 here,
I can only kind of see the 1 and the 2. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so that's the original drawing table, by the way. Speak to hell. So I do 11 by 17s.
Yeah.
And just the old school stuff.
Yeah.
This is Serial 6.
Yeah.
And one thing that people are amazed at when they see my stuff at shows is I hand letter on the page.
Yeah.
And which means when I need to make a correction, I have to do a paste up like here.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah. But the hand lettering is so organic and so natural. It becomes part of the art,
I have a Wacom tablet. I only use it to. I just don't want to be. I don't want to be a digital artist because I feel like um, I don't know. I love the handmade aspect of it.
Yeah.
I rode in on this horse. I need to ride out on this horse. It's not. It's one thing in my life I don't want to evolve. I mean, I'm using Photoshop and Adobe InDesign for layouts and all that stuff to finish. But I like ending the day with a piece of art that didn't exist that morning. And if I want to, I can sell it for $1 zillion.
Sure.
But if there's nothing but JPEGs on my computer, all the JPEGs on your computer are worthless.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
what
I,
are you
I
gonna
agree with that. So when you say you use Photoshop and InDesign, what are you actually using it for? Because that looks like a pretty finished page of artwork right there.
It is finished. I go into Photoshop, go into Photoshop, clean it up,
Okay.
and get it formatted down to 10.438 by 6.875. That's including bleed. And then I transfer those little TIFFs into InDesign, which is the page layout.
I
So I
see.
did the
Okay.
whole magazine layout.
Yeah.
And then that goes out to a super high res print ready PDF.
Okay.
And then that PDF is what I send out to the printer.
Yeah. How big of a file is that PDF you're sending out?
Um, because I'm black and white, it's not bad.
Yeah. Okay.
The book itself, the page 1 through 24, will be like it'd be like 134 megabytes,
Okay.
and then the cover may be 600 megabytes. But when you get the folder with all the art scans are high res, like in color at 600
Yeah.
DPI, and
Yeah.
then the bitmaps are at 1200 DPI, full size. So the folder ends up being, a gig for each
That's much
book.
smaller than I would have guessed, though. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I only have a couple of external hard drives saving it all. And then the old days, I saved it all to different formats, and I keep those in the tub. Not all of them have been transferred over yet, but there were things that came before you kids were born. We had other things like zip drives and floppy drives, and then
Yeah.
write it on the back of a turtle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I keep it all.
You're coming pretty close to your 200th issue. I would, if my calculation is right,
I
of
think you're
your
right.
various
Yeah,
various
because
versions.
Strangers was 107 by itself.
Yep.
I haven't added up the others. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a milestone, right? Because that's a lot of pages, man. Have you kept it all?
I have that written down right here, actually.
Yeah.
Isn't it great? We're doing this in my studio.
No, I love it. That's
This is like a business Zoom meeting. Oh, yes.
yeah. It's the thing you can, like we used to do these things in person. Oh well, and I'll go back to doing them in person once COVID's done. But I actually really enjoyed this part of the Zoom of you being able to go over and look. Yeah.
I'm at, is the Vichy 5 serial? I'm at 230.
Wow. Wow.
So
Wow.
there's the
So you're coming
checklist.
on 250 really soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should make a big deal of that. The
Yeah.
250th comic. That should be a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, just you've got like a year and a half or whatever, but think
I don't know
about
what
that.
it'll be. I don't know what it will be. I have not decided on my after this year. This ends at 10
Yeah.
in January,
Yeah.
and then I haven't decided.
Okay. All right.
I may
You
go
should
into
you should
accordion
build
repair.
something around the idea of 250. I just think,
Okay.
because there's not a lot of cartoonists who have, you're not you took a couple of months break there, but pretty much we're talking about 250 comics in, let's say, 280 months, right? Something along those lines, right?
Mhm.
And that's a thing, man. You should be proud of that. I think.
I'm proud of it, but I'm also batshit crazy because of it. I don't get out much.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so weird to think about that I have spent, however many years that is, um, just cranking out comics and just, you would think I would break a hip or run out of ideas or something, but I'm so
Right.
lucky.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, I think it's great, man. I know certainly I couldn't sustain a narrative at all over that period of time. Even trying to write a column about how the comics industry works, I ran out of steam on that shit a long time ago, man. It's
I love the
your work ethic to me is amazing, and not just your work ethic, but your craft. Um, and when I think about my favorite cartoonists, it's often the people who are doing the work every month and putting in the time, like you, Stan Sakai. Like that. There's a guy who does not get enough credit in the universe for putting out awesome goddamn comics every month.
yeah.
And I feel you're the same way too. So yeah,
Well, I think my heroes did. It was a lifestyle. It's
yeah,
not. It's not something you do for a little while. It's a lifestyle. Charles Schultz
yeah,
or Rumiko.
yeah,
I mean, this is just Hergé. This is just
yeah.
this is what you do. You
But
wake
when
up,
you
you
think,
eat, you
but when you
draw.
think about Charles Schultz, right? Charles Schultz did in a month, he did 8 pages more or less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're doing 20 something pages a month.
Comic books are a lot more work than comic
They're a
strips.
lot more work. A lot more work.
I wish I'd thought about that. That cover band's looking pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap this up with two things. I guess you already answered one of them kind of already. Serial is 10 issues total, and you're not sure what's coming next?
I'm not. We're
Okay.
we're thinking about several ideas, and I haven't decided yet. Even in different formats, whether it's a little book like the DC cover books, or something bigger. So yeah, it's all on the table right
Are you thinking possibly you're not going to serialize the next thing?
now. People keep saying do a graphic novel, an original graphic novel that wasn't a series first. And then my first thought is, how am I supposed to live for a year
Yeah.
while I draw a graphic novel? A
Yeah.
lot of the people that did it were also like graphic designers with careers in Chicago or something.
Right.
That's how they're managing it, or they have a different life than I do.
Yeah.
Um,
It
but
also seems to me that if you're consistently selling 10 to 15 in that range, it pays for itself, and you're not really guaranteed that you're going to sell 10 or 15,000 copies of your graphic novel,
that's the point. You make a
right?
graphic novel and it sells 3,000 copies.
Yeah,
You missed
yeah,
all the single sales. You could have sold
yeah,
it by a chapter.
yeah.
And in a way, it's never been lost on me that I'm living Stephen King's dream. He had this fantasy about, I would love to write a book, but sell it and release it a chapter at a time. That's
He
a comic,
tried too. He
dude.
tried. He
He
tried doing
tried.
that, and it didn't work.
That's a comic book
Stephen
series.
King couldn't make it work.
No. So, but if we're doing it in comics, I mean,
Yeah,
every
yeah,
issue is a chapter, and then I collect it and put out the book. I mean, why would
yeah,
you not do the chapter part?
yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
still very
it's how I
appealing.
feel too. And when I look at the things that are happening right now, when I look at people going to Substack I mean, I guess it's another way of publishing the comic, but the whole ecosystem works around the serialization, right? It's not merely that you're making money. I'm making money from the serialization. It's what allows me to pay my rent here in my store, right? It allows
Yeah.
me to pay my staff. And so I don't know. I really worry a lot of the times about the choices that people are making right now. Because it's almost very much like that period where Diamond became everything, and people made a bunch of choices that were probably not the wise choices in the long run.
Mhm.
They signed up with other companies or whatever to just to get themselves through the patch, and then in a lot of cases it just didn't work out.
You know what? Those people, we keep referring to people who've made bad choices, and we both probably have players in our heads and things that have happened, the history of our time. And I can't quote any of those people. I
Mm,
I don't remember anything those people said because I didn't agree with them. But
right.
I do remember a quote from everybody I admired. And um, Todd McFarlane was one of the smartest guys when he was active in comics. And I remember when he was doing Spawn, his law at the studio was never miss a deadline. Everybody's depending on it. If they
Yep.
can't depend on when it comes out, it it's we've blown it.
Yep.
So it's like a TV show. We depend on that coming on every Monday night, and we it becomes a fun part of your life. You're glad to
Yeah.
have it in your life. If you don't know when that show's coming on, if you don't know when my book's ever going to show up again, I can't. You can't rely on it. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out of the game.
Yeah.
The reliability is. I've seen a lot of flaky artists struggle with reliability and things like that. It's not that they don't want to, it's just that they haven't quite yet got themselves in a place where they're ready to, okay, I'm going to devote everything to make sure that book gets in every single month. Dum, bum, bum,
Yeah.
bum, bum.
Yeah.
I've seen people do it. It can be done. It's just a commitment. And
Yeah.
the thing about a book is they commit to it so heavily. I commit to making it. Takes me 6 weeks of my life to make it. You committed front end money. You committed your whole store, your rent, your staff, everything,
Yeah.
hoping somebody walks in and gets it. And then the reader, we're all hoping that they will spend 15 minutes with that book and then
Yep.
come back again for another one next month.
Yep.
None of that is lost on any of us, you
Yeah.
know. And I think that's the other part. There's a part of me that gets to come right over here and zone out. And then, but when I'm not there, I realize I have a responsibility to go back over there and do it again.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah. Well, your craft is amazing and your work is amazing. So that's the way it should be. Hey, so the last question, let's go with the last question is there's a lot of people who watch this series of events, the series of interviews who are cartoonists, want to be cartoonists or trying to break in or trying to figure it out. What would be the piece of advice that you would give someone who wanted to make comics, and it doesn't have to be like a craft thing. It can be an emotional thing. It can be a philosophical thing, or it can be a craft thing. It can be any goddamn thing you want. But I'm curious, what would be the word that you would give someone who's going, hey, Terry, I'd like to make comics. What do I do?
Ooh, yeah. Number one, make something you haven't seen before. Don't rip off somebody you love and admire. Don't do your version of Usagi Yojimbo or your version of Strangers. Do your thing. Pour yourself into it, and try to draw. Realize that you've got a visual medium, so try to draw things that we've never seen. You want your book to have some panels in there that you couldn't get with a camera. Because you can only see it from here. Maybe you'll be the first person to ever draw a cloud exploding, or I felt like I was the first person to ever draw somebody setting a gravestone on fire and the gravesite on fire. When I got moments like that, I was just like, yes, yes, I thought of something I haven't seen before. So that's the cool thing about comics. Otherwise, just make a TV show. And then when you want to build your audience, right now, Brian and I were talking about how hard it is in the business side of it because it's all about big Titan stuff and 6-digit books. But for you as an individual to get going, really, put your shyness aside. I would never talk to anybody one-to-one, but I will talk about my book to anybody.
Yeah.
So you put your book out there like your child you're proud of and say, have you seen this? Would you read this? If I make it, will you put it in your store? And call the store owners and send it to them, because one thing I've learned is both librarians and bookstore owners love books, and they
Yes,
will read everything. that comes out, they want to know, they know the next new star is about to put a book out. Is it going to be you? They'll read everything to find out. And then when they find one, they network the hell out of it, and they tell all the other bookstore owners and all the other book lovers and all their customers. So do the waterfall effect. Start with people who review books like Brian and librarians and things like that. And then go to the shows and put up your table, put up your stuff. And at some point in the show, when you go to a comic show, make the rounds, get up off your butt, go table to table to every single retailer and make sure they know your name and your book so that you're no longer a secret. If you did that, all that consistently for 1 year, by the end of the year, the main people in the comic industry will know who you are and they will be talking about you. And if your book is wonderful, there you go. Boom. Talent rises to the top.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's always the hard part though, is if your book is wonderful, because there's a lot of people who will do that. Their book is not so wonderful. And then you've got to be the one that's like, oh, you're not quite ready yet, buddy. That's why, again, I could go back to that original story that I opened this interview with. I could tell you had it. You weren't what you are at page 100, but you had the craft, you had the beat, you had the thing, you got what comics were, and it matters. It matters.
If you're a storyteller, you'll have that, and you'll figure it out with your pencil.
Yeah.
Like the very first issue that I showed everybody that got buzz, it was the only comic that had come out in 5 years that had a woman strip off all of her clothes in the public park and throw them at her boyfriend she was breaking up with.
That would be true.
That was my main scene, and I wrote forward and backwards from that middle scene in the middle of the issue. Just it doesn't have to be the best drawing in the world, but at least have something original in the story, something that none of us have ever seen before.
Yeah. I love it. I love it, Terry. I love you. You are a fantastic cartoonist, and anything I can ever do to help you and help your career, I will always do, because work like this is the thing that makes this store sing.
Brian, thank you.
Thank you for making this. I could never make this. You made it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, all I can do is make it. I mean, you got it out to the world.
Yeah,
you got it out to the world. All I did was make it.
Yeah.
It takes a team.
It takes a team. We are a team, in fact. Okay, so I'm going to do some club business now. The club business is this. I will come back to you in a sec here. The club business is next month's book is Lost on Planet Earth. Magdalene Visaggio, I might have pronounced that wrong, actually. Claudia Aguirre are going to be here, and we're going to talk to them about making this. We're also, the Dave McKean interview that was supposed to happen like 2 weeks ago has been rescheduled now. I'll send out something soon, but it'll be the last Sunday of this month. And I cannot wait to talk to Dave McKean about Raptor. This is some good shit right here, guys. Next month's Classics Club is Heavy Liquid. We're talking to Paul Pope. I'm really excited to talk to Paul Pope. I think this is great. And then the Kids Club, which is this coming Sunday, I want to say, is Pax Sampson. So, look at all the great books we're talking about. Look, can you have imagined, Terry, back when we started, that we would be able to do this thing where we can go look at these diverse books and things that, I don't know. Comics are in the greatest place they've ever been. They're also in the scariest, most terrible place they've ever been. But as long as the work's there, and as long as guys like you make that work, I think we're in a good place.
The world keeps making cartoonists and storytellers. It's just going to keep on.
Yeah. All right. Well, dude, thank you, Terry, for spending these 2 hours. 2 hours. Did it feel like 2 hours? No, this felt like a 20-minute phone call. Yeah. So, no, really, thank you for spending these 2 hours with us. I want to thank Jordan for running the show. I want to thank Zoe and Kat for running the store, which I couldn't do this otherwise. I want to thank all the members of the Graphic Novel Club because we couldn't do this without your financial support. And hopefully you will see that we're giving you good books every month. And if you're watching this at home, join the clubs and make the money on this work. There'll be ad at the end here. But anyway, that was our club for the month. Thank you, Terry.
My pleasure.
We'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for watching this episode of the Classic Graphic Novel of the Month Club. If you enjoyed this interview, please make sure you hit subscribe and hit that bell up in the top corner. You know, every month we look at the history of comics and we pick a great graphic novel to bring you and a great interview to bring you as well. We'd love it if you joined the club, and we hope that you can join us.